a middle name or first name of Alexander, Alejandro, or Alessandro. So Castro's name is Fidel Alejandro Castro.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can trace them even before that back into Mesopotamia.
So we've got the genealogy, as you've
Yes.
done with Bibi Katehi.
Yes.
We've got the DNA, and you were talking about the physiological resemblance.
The physiological.
Please break that down for us.
So when I got all these pictures together,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a photograph of Fidel Castro when he was a teenager or something with no facial hair.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got a painting of Philip I of Spain, the first Habsburg king of Spain.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a certain kind of lips. They were very thick, and they were sort of had vertical lines in them or folds.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a mutation. It's a genetic mutation. It's actually a defect.
Mm.
And I compared it to Fidel Castro's lips. He
Mm-hmm.
has Habsburg lips.
Mm-hmm.
It's indistinguishable. I mean, it's just, it's absolutely a bloodline. And then I did this to John Kerry. John Kerry's family were Jews in the Habsburg Empire in Czechoslovakia, and they were Hohenjude, house Jews. So they were very, very high in the court, and they advised the kings. Teresa Heinz Kerry is from a Portuguese Hohenjude family, and her family advised the Portuguese court. And then I found a painting of John Kerry's ancestor on his mother's side. She was a Forbes,
Right.
not
Of
Malcolm
the,
Forbes.
Of the opium family Forbes.
The opium family.
The Yale
Yes.
Forbes.
And I found the first sea captain, Forbes sea captain, in 1823. This painting was painted. And it's in his house, which is now a museum in Boston. Those are the Boston Brahmins. They were the drug dealing captains. And I just couldn't believe it. Oh, my God. That ancestor, Captain Forbes, who had 3 of the fastest clipper ships when he was 24, John Kerry looks exactly like him. So these are ancient bloodlines that they keep. They know how to breed, who to breed into the line, and how to keep the physical characteristics. How could someone 150 years later, 175 years later, how could John Kerry look exactly like him? That's like 10 generations or 8 generations.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized they have very, very strict breeding programs. And for instance, with the royal families, the popes had to always give permission for 2 members of a royal family to marry.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, especially if they were on the throne. And there could be no relatives or family association for 7 generations, in order to marry. And when the Roman empires collapsed, the Western Empire collapsed first, the Eastern Empire collapsed in the 1500s, late 1400s. These ruling families wanted to reassemble the Habsburg Empire. Remember, the Roman Empire became the Habsburg Empire, and they wanted to recreate that Roman Empire, and they did it by intermarrying very closely related people, but they had to all have land that were pieces of part of the Holy Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. And so there was so much inbreeding in the Habsburgs. The Jesuits did it, actually, and they did it. One particular Habsburg prince, who was to be the emperor, Holy Roman Empire, had so much inbreeding that recently Germany did DNA studies on the whole Habsburg bloodlines, and they said he had the DNA of someone who had been the product of sex between a sister and a brother.
That's Egyptian, isn't it?
That's Egyptian.
That's a dynastic pairing.
Yes.
So what you're saying also, before we leave this point or move on past it, is that certain physical traits are also passed on.
Yes,
that
they are.
They're telltale physical traits because of this breeding program, including mouth structure, in the case of Fidel, the brow, the bridge, the nose structure.
Yes, intelligence, beauty. There are many, many characteristics that they're breeding for, but it can also be a way to wage war. So instead of waging all these wars to reunite the Habsburg Empire, the war was in bed.
Uh-huh.
So they did it through inbreeding.
And then they can reintegrate the empire.
Well, after about
200
years, a bloodline will just die out because they're infertile from so much inbreeding. Mm-hmm. And so they would just take a cadet family, one of the other branches, and they'd plug them in. Mm-hmm. And so it was the same bloodline. But if you look at the Habsburgs, they all have strawberry blonde hair. It's reddish blonde. And there's a Pope, Orsini, who had reddish blonde hair. And I think he was involved in the Habsburg line.
Okay. Well, that helps explain how, by examining portraiture and today photography, and perhaps some forensic scientists can break it down as well, measure eye distances and eye color, and of course DNA. We're going to be plugging in some of the missing pieces of this puzzle here to further support this hypothesis of this this ancient bloodline that's at the head of our
Yes.
world civilization.
Yes, and so-
and mean us harm. They want to,
Yes.
from what
Yes.
I'm gathering, they want to exterminate most of the
Yes.
human population, regardless of race.
They do. They've had their own breeding program, especially through the universities.
Mm-hmm.
I had 53 marriage proposals at Davis and in the UC system, and I was going crazy. It was frightening me to death. I thought they were crazy. I didn't know why they were asking me to marry them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were Kuhn Loeb, the Loeb-Kuhn Loeb banking
Yes.
family.
Mm-hmm.
They were. There was another one, a couple more. Anyway, they were all banking. Goldman Sachs. There was a Sachs introduced to me in the geology department at Davis in Berkeley, and he said, "You're really a catch," and I didn't know what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Now I understand. These are breeding programs.
And you were targeted
Yes.
as a broodmare.
Yes.
That's
yes.
how Diana
Yes.
Spencer described herself.
Yes. She was a broodmare.
She was a broodmare
Yes.
to help regenerate the,
And she was a
the decadent
broodmare.
line of...
She was a broodmare because her biological father was Sir Jimmy Goldsmith.
Sure.
And the Goldsmiths and the Rothschilds came from Frankfurt, Germany in the mid-1700s to establish banking in London, to take over
Sure.
that banking center.
Mm-hmm.
And they intermarried. They are Iranians. They are not Jews. They're Iranians. And so that put the Iranian bloodline into the royal family of England.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to find out. You see, Kate Middleton's mother's maiden name was Goldsmith.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a hidden history, too.
Sure.